purpose of this WebEx is kind of twofold. One, to show you what the new changes are to OPTIC, and also to do a little bit of previewing of some of the exciting development that we're doing around support for district and coach coordinator roles in support of continuous improvement, using OPTIC as kind of the platform to do continuous improvement. And you know, for OPTIC, we're really trying to reposition OPTIC as you know, what's kind of organically happened, which is it's really become a place for ongoing continuous improvement, kind of separate from what's happening with the certification process, whether that's you know, as that's transitioning to the Link Learning Alliance. You know, OPTIC will continue to be based on the essential elements and will continue to be developed in a way that is in support of pathway quality. We're really focused on, you know, making the complexity a little bit reduced in terms of what's seen on the screen and the navigation of the tool. And we're also starting to think about what a more codified service offering would be in terms of supporting the processes of continuous improvement in addition to the digital platform side. So if those are things that you are interested in learning more about, you know, as we were just starting to develop what our continuous improvement service package might look like, please be in touch with me, Ben Crosby at connectedcalifornia.org, for any inquiries around changes to OPTIC, technical assistance, or if you want to get the latest updates on a more robust service offering that we're developing here at ConnectEd around continuous improvement. Okay, that being said, we're going to try to keep this to around 30 minutes. And so I'm going to just try to highlight the main changes, but not go too deep down rabbit holes for each individual change, but really just to give folks an overview of kind of our approach to development. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with, you know, the newest feature that we've added is this pathway planning tool. So if you can see my screen, the Home tab has stayed the same. You still have all the functionality there with the collaborative wall posting, managing your pathway members, downloading the essential elements, inviting people into your OPTIC pages. That's all still there, but this planning tab is new. It was piloted last year, and it's a pretty robust tool that's designed for pathway design teams and pathway implementation teams. So when those terms to us mean the following. You know, from our experience, we've seen that the folks who are initially doing the pathway design, some of the choosing of the theme and the mission and vision, and maybe making some of the original industry contacts, often those aren't the folks who are at the teacher level who are going to be actually implementing the pathway. But we think that the planning tool can actually help this transition from design into implementation. And it follows the phases of pathway design that we've outlined in some of our other print materials and guides and toolkits. And you know, you can see the phases here. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically we believe that pathway design can be done in a phased approach. And what the planning tool offers is a step-by-step support and structure for pathway design teams moving into pathway implementation teams, or the teacher teams, that really starts with some of the foundational pieces of pathway design, but then really becomes much more the work of pathway teachers as they start developing their community of practice and looking at the linked learning approach to learning and teaching. The steps will help folks keep track of work that they feel has been completed, which is the orange indicator, work that's in progress, which is the green indicator, and steps that haven't been looked at. And this is an interactive space designed intentionally to provide a space for cycles of feedback. So the way that the tool can be used kind of in the best use case is a pathway design team is going through the steps, looking at all the available resources related to each particular step of pathway design, and at some point they are uploading digital artifacts into this space that we call the deliverable. So we outline the step and some brief instructions, But the real, I think, value comes from a really robust set of resources and samples from the field and from Connected and from our partners that help people think about the work. Pathway design teams can upload these digital artifacts, and then they're available here for feedback. And so in a best case scenario, what we see is a pathway design team over some period of time. Sometimes they have a year of planning, sometimes it's less, but they're taking on the work of pathway design and capturing their work through uploading digital artifacts. Then ideally we have folks at the district or site leadership level who are monitoring and supporting that progress by looking at the artifacts that are being uploaded and providing feedback in line to those artifacts, which means that you'll see when this loads, a coach could come into this space and look at the planning or design artifact that was uploaded, and then we have a space here for folks to kind of provide that feedback. And ideally, this feedback is grounded in the essential elements or other quality criteria. And what we've seen, like I've said, in the best use case is that this actually really helps the design process in terms of achieving quality much sooner. So there's a pathway and district we partnered with where we had pathway team uploading artifacts. District leader came in, analyzed those artifacts against the essential elements, provided feedback, and then we immediately saw the design artifacts be revised and re-uploaded. And that's kind of the goal of the planning tool, is to provide a collaborative workspace for pathway design teams to do the design work and capture their work, a space for coaches and district leaders, site leaders to come in and access those planning artifacts and provide feedback. And then with kind of this overview feature here that we saw on the first page, it's a way to help pathway design teams keep track of where they're at in the circle. So it was piloted last year. The reason it's part of this WebEx is that it's now available for any pathway or district that's in Connected Studios. So if you are supporting new pathways or emerging pathways, we encourage you to take a look at this tool. And of course, any questions or for any technical support, reach out to me to get some overview. We also do have some video tutorials about the planning tool located in our Help FAQ section, which I encourage folks to check out as well. So the planning tool is now available for all. In this latest batch, we haven't done updates to the data center. That's kind of something that we're continuing to think about, but where we have done quite a bit of refresh is to the self-assessment, the action plan, and the evidence features. So one thing, if you're real familiar, you may have noticed there's now an actual action plan tab, which was separated out from what used to be this kind of drop-down self-assessment menu here. And we've also really improved the user interface based on feedback that we got from our partners, which was that oftentimes pathways, when they came in to do the self-assessment, felt overwhelmed by the amount of text that was on the screen at any given time, but also the overwhelming nature of linked learning. And so to try to ease some of that overwhelming feeling, we've chunked out the self-assessment in the new way. So what used to be kind of a never-ending scroll down through a pretty long self-assessment, it's now organized into the essential elements. So we're only going to be self-assessing an element at a time. And what that means is that, if we just say wanted to do some self-assessing about work-based learning, you just navigate to the different sections using this top navigation bar here, and that will take you to the self-assessment, but only for that essential element. So again, if you're familiar with the old version, lots of scrolling, is definitely functional, but this is a much cleaner interface and actually has a lot more features on this page, which we think are going to be really helpful. One of those is the view criteria. So rather than having the whole, all the criteria visible on the page at any time, they're now collapsible by this view hide criteria. And we think that that will help the workflow and help people slow down and be a little bit more mindful about analyzing the quality indicators that are in the essential element rubric that is what we see here. And it also, we think, is going to enable people to not maybe feel quite as overwhelmed with the sheer amount of criteria that are embedded into the essential elements. So those can be hidden and viewed as pathway teams are going through the self-assessment. It still shows you your percent completed, but what's improved in this space now is that right here when I'm in a self-assessment mode, I can transition into action planning or evidence. So this is, we think that this is going to allow more flexibility in the way the tool is used. So rather than an approach where we might ask pathway teams to complete an entire self-assessment, we might ask them to zone in on a particular essential element and do a complete cycle of self-assessment, action planning, and cataloging evidence. And we think that having these links available here is going to facilitate that process. So in the place where you have action plans created, you'll see View Action Item. And for a self-assessment sub-element that does not have an action item, you'll see the Add Action Item here. And that will take you directly to the action item related to the sub-element that you're self-assessing at. You also have the export functionality, which we know has been used quite a bit. So you can still export your self-assessment summary or the self-assessment summary with all the rubric language as well. And then the other thing that's new is this really easy way to navigate between self-assessments. So, previously you would go to Manage Self-Assessments and maybe look for an archived self-assessment in the case where you were maybe doing some comparison of how our self-assessment data is changing year to year. But now you can see with this drop-down, you can hop around really easily to previous versions of your self-assessment. If you're interested in comparing, have we gone up, have we gone down? We had some good notes in our old self-assessment. Let's go look at those. So for all those use cases, we think that this drop-down here is going to be really, really useful for folks who have had some experience and have done several self-assessments and may want to hop around between different self-assessments. The self-assessment summary, the functionality has remained the same, but the interface has been cleaned up quite a bit. So let me hop over to the summary page. So we still have the kind of visual indicators that kind of give our pathway teams and coaches indicators of how they're assessing overall. We have the kind of color-coded progress bar. And then we have, just a simplified, cleaner, arguably more elegant interface here to keep track of what's been assessed and what hasn't. And we still have the functionality here of being able to view our action plans or create action plans. So in the previous version, you had to do a lot of scrolling down to the bottom of the page to create action plans, but you can see now that it's all in line. And if I want to create an action plan for a sub-element, I can do that here without all the scrolling that we were asking folks to do previously. Now these column headers are also sortable. So if I just wanted to take a look at the areas where I have done some self-assessment, I can click on this column header and get a sort, and that's useful kind of in the same way that the old summary was, where you might be encouraging teams to take a look at the areas where they're developing or beginning and mark those as potential areas to do some action planning around. We've added some color coding just for some visual cues on how the summary and self-assessment is organized, and you're going to see that play out consistently. So you saw how the self-assessment was chunked out. That kind of color scheme and kind of a foundational organization around the essential elements is pretty consistent throughout the new features. Moving over into the action plan space, this kind of proves the point I was just making that, previously we didn't have a lot of action plan management functionality, but with the latest version of OPTIC, we have a lot. And so action plans are going to be organized like you see by the essential elements, but now you get a much more robust set of action plan management functionality that is going to do a couple things. One, you no longer have to start a new set of action plans if you start a new self-assessment. So to restate that, in the previous version, if you were to start a new self-assessment, the system would basically mark any existing action plans as complete, kind of assuming that you wanted to start from scratch. But what we heard from our partners is that, well, we actually have action plans that span multiple years and may exist across several years of self-assessment. And so now what you'll see is that all the action plans are available here, regardless of which self-assessment they were originally designed around. We also have some improved navigation here on this screen. So if I wanted to go revisit or change my self-assessment, I can click that link, and that will take me right back to that sub-element and the self-assessment. And again, like we saw, we have the ability to toggle between different versions of self-assessments to see how we originally had assessed. The action plans can be accessed here by clicking on the view if they exist, and when there are no action plans, like you see in this work-based learning outcomes sub-element, you would create a new action plan. Now the functionality hasn't changed too much with the action plan features, but it's just a much cleaner interface. And the icons here basically allow the same functions that we had in previous versions with the hover over to explain what each icon does. You'll have the modified date in the same fields with the overall goal, and then the action step, the steps themselves are going to work in the same way with the same fields. So what is the step, person responsible, due date, resources, and success. And we've learned through some partnership with Long Beach that this aligns really well to the idea of helping teams create SMART goals, that, specific, measurable, achievable, resourced, etc. So if you're supporting teams with developing achievable and really well thought out action plans, you may want to do kind of a SMART goal approach, and you'll see that that approach aligns really well with the fields that we have embedded here into the action plan space. To return to the action plan summary, you can navigate back with this link here. Overall, I think that this is a great improvement in terms of managing the action plans, and also one of the take-home points is that action plans now are not automatically closed if you start a new self-assessment. So some action plans can span multiple semesters, multiple years, whatever makes sense for our practitioners. You also have the export functionality, which allows teams to export active plans only or all plans. So an all plans export would give me like a historical picture of all the work completed, would include completed and archived action items, and active plans would be what are we currently working on. And those format out pretty cleanly into a PDF export, which can be used in a lot of different ways. We've seen folks printing out hard copies of their action plans and distributing those to their pathway team members and using those to support the process of revisiting action plans, seeing if they've been achieved, seeing if action plans need to be revised. And then lastly on this tab, you can do a filter here so you can see all sub-elements, or you can actually restrict your view to show me only the sub-elements where I actually have action items. Okay, let's move over to evidence. In the evidence section, again, we're going to see the consistent theme of the essential elements played out with these accordion boxes. And some of the new features that we've added into the evidence section, but beyond the collapsing essential element sections, is now we have some sort by functionality. So if you've ever worked with a team that has a lot of evidence uploaded, I think you'll see the value in this, and that often they want to know, well, I want to see what I uploaded last, or a coach or a site leader might come in and be interested. I want to see what they're working on currently. And so this sort by upload date will allow folks to toggle, chronologically. You click it once and it puts, most recent on top. You click it again and it puts most recent on the bottom. Also notice, and this was in the previous version, but it's a little bit easier to see in this case, in this iteration, is the feedback. So similar to the way that we've designed the planning tool to be a feedback and improvement engine, we think that the evidence section can facilitate those processes as well. And so coaches, site leaders, even the pathway team themselves, they can access any artifact that they've uploaded into evidence and leave comments on those artifacts. And those comments stay in line with the actual artifact, and they're pretty easy to set up. You just go ahead and type in this box, leave comment, and click the add button. And like I said, I've seen pathway team members using this to communicate with each other. I've also seen coaches, coordinators, site leaders, district leaders come in and provide feedback. And then, in previous, when we were facilitating more of the certification, this was obviously a place where the lead reviewer community would come in and provide a lot of feedback on the evidence that's been uploaded. And so, that was a pretty quick walkthrough. But I think that, kind of the main takeaways in my perspective are a much cleaner organization of all the content that OPTIC is involved in, the essential elements and all those quality criteria. The ability to have action plans that are not tied to an individual self-assessment, but that can live across several self-assessments. A much cleaner and reduced amount of content in the self-assessment processes themselves. We talked about that. We looked at the way that the self-assessment quality criteria can be hidden, and also the way that we're only showing one element at a time. And then again, kind of working backwards, that planning tool, which is what we've heard is quite well received in terms of helping teams helping design teams and early pathway implementers keep their work going and provide that digital workspace for them to get some feedback on their design artifacts. So I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions. If you've muted, go ahead and unmute when you ask your question, and I'll try to address it. And then where we're going to go after this Q&A is a preview of some of the development that we're looking at in support of the district coordinator roles. So let me just pause here and see what kind of questions or general comments come up from the folks on the WebEx.
I just want to congratulate you and thank you for all your work. And it's great stuff. It's we've used a little bit of it, and I love being able to use the action planning piece of it, and look forward to working that more. So really, you really have simplified it. It looks like it's very, very easy to use. So thanks.
Thanks, Steve. You've been a great partner in helping gather data about how this plays out in the field. And I know for those of you on the call, Steve and I did have a chance to do some professional development that was built on the planning tool, and while it wasn't perfect, we definitely saw that the potential for supporting pathway design teams and keeping the work going over time is definitely there in the tool. So thank you, Steve.
Well, I do have a question. Yeah, I do have one quick question on the assessment piece. Is that data entered by the pathway lead and/or whatever the support piece is, or do all the members of the pathway team take the assessment?
It's a great question, Steve. So by default, the pathway lead teacher, we call the pathway admin, is the person who gets full access to the self-assessment. However, there are plenty of cases where teams want more than just that person to be able to actually do the selection of the self-assessment criteria. And so we can configure it so that multiple pathway team members can actually contribute to the self-assessment. The ideal use case is that the pathway lead is sitting down with their team, and they're using OPTIC as a way to spur conversation and reflection on pathway practice. Like we really are not trying to steer people towards have one person on your team go sit in a room and do the pathway self-assessment. We hope and we coach and we really advocate for this being a collaborative practice where the pathway lead teacher might be the facilitator, but that there's definitely input gathered from all the pathway team members. It may be that in later iterations we're going to be able to build in the ability for all pathway team members to self-assess, and then for the system to kind of show some aggregate view. But we're not there at this current version, but that's definitely some of the things that we're thinking about.
This is Dave. Yeah, Steve, I think just piggybacking on what Ben said, we are interested in this idea of kind of an offline calibration feature that would allow, say, the pathway lead to invite not just teachers, but perhaps other folks who are part of the pathway to do their own self-assessment and to have essentially kind of a dashboard to be able to calibrate and look at where there's maybe variance to help inform what the kind of official self-assessment may be. I think you guys will be very excited about kind of this piece, which is really the coaching coordinator role, which has been absent explicitly in the OPTIC. So Ben, you want to give a quick quick run through of what some of the stuff we're kind of designing out and hopefully getting into production soon.
I do. Okay, so this is what a new functionality might look like in support of what we're calling coordinators but this role, you know, in some districts it might be called coaches. In some districts it might be called program support specialists. This might even be an assistant principal at a site. But the functionality that we're thinking through, and we'd be very interested in thought partnership around this, would be to empower folks in support of pathways with more accessible data that's coming up through folks going through continuous improvement cycles in OPTIC. And so I'm going to kind of go through a few screens here, but if you were a coach or a coordinator, you would have this tab, and it could potentially have two different features. One would be a much improved assessment matrix with a lot more interactivity, which I'll show you guys in a second. And then the second would be a place for a coach or coordinator site leader to articulate their own coaching plan and coaching moves in support of the action plans that they might be reviewing at the pathway level. So that being said, let's take a look at some of the designs, and then we'll pause again once I walk through and for some feedback. But you know, one thing that we're considering changing would be the axes of the matrix itself. So in the previous version, you had all the different pathway names across the top and the sub-elements at the left. So we're thinking about what's the best orientation of those. You know, as we kind of think through this, what we're trying to avoid is the situation we have currently with the district tab, where the amount of scrolling that it takes actually takes away from the experience of trying to look at data at the self-assessment level. So we're thinking through that, and this is potentially what that might look like. The flag indicators here, and I'm going to hop over to a different screen, one that actually has some interactivity to it. But the flag indicators used to be static, and what they were signaling is, hey, these teams have action plans in these sub-element areas. But now they're actually, we have the potential to code these as being interactive. So if I wanted to look at a particular pathway's action plan, now I can click on the flag, and that takes me right to that pathway's action plan. And to kind of play that out a step further, now we're thinking that I'm supporting a pathway, and I come in here and I look at their action plan, but I may need to have a plan of my own of how I'm going to support this particular pathway. What are my moves and support going to be? And so now, and this view would be available to that coordinator, but not necessarily to the pathway by default. But if you see at the bottom, underneath the pathway's action plan content is a place for the coach to start articulating kind of their coaching approach. You know, and we're thinking that the phases of coaching that align to the Connect-Ed coaching model are a good place to start, but we're open to exploring other layouts. But the idea, again, is that I can apply my coaching lens now to seeing what the pathways, what the goals are articulated by the pathway, and then what my role as a coach are going to be, you know, establishing my coaching goals, you know, articulating how I'm going to be supporting the work, you know, and even reflecting on progress in terms of, am I being, you know, effective in my role as a support person for this this particular pathway? We're also thinking that in some cases, coaches might want to share their coaching plans with each other, and so there's an initial design here that would enable a coach to share their coaching plan. So if you're trying to support a coaching community of practice, or you might be in a role where you're coordinating coaches, you could ask your coaches to share their plans with you, and that would enable just a really transparent and like above the board way for folks to say, yes, you know, I want the collaboration with my colleagues across district at other sites, or potentially with district leadership. So we're starting to think through, you know, what does that look like? Who do you share it to? But I think we're going to be developing something in the space around the ability to share coaching plans. A couple of the things that I want to highlight in these designs, and that is this idea of raising a hand. So we want to empower pathway teams to ask for help through the system. And so in this view, you see that there's kind of this icon that says raise hand. And so the use case here would be that a pathway team is struggling with an action plan, and rather than navigating away to their email and writing up an email to their coach or coordinator, In this case, they would just say raise hand. And that would trigger a notification to the coach or coordinator that, hey, the pathway, you know, at Franklin High School is struggling with pathway-specific outcomes, and they've asked for help. And then those notifications and that notification stream can be configured by folks at the local level in terms of designating who do you want to be receiving these requests for help. And so I can show you what a design looks like for that, and it actually brings me over to the districts tab. So we know that one of the roles districts are playing is figuring out who's supporting which pathway. And so this page actually looks simple, but it would kind of trigger quite a bit of action on the site. So here's what I mean. So if I am a district leader and I'm going to assign a coach or a coordinator to a specific pathway, what the system then is going to do is say, okay, now I know that I'm going to send notifications to this coach for when pathway teams raise their hand. I'm going to send notifications to this coach when new evidence has been uploaded. I'm going to send notifications when new planning and design artifacts have been uploaded. And so this allows a little bit more local management, and we envision the notification stream to be something that is going to really keep the work moving forward with some pace, but then also kind of getting the onus of control off of us and into the local context so that, you know, district leaders can decide who receives notifications for pathways in terms of evidence and asking for help. And then we also know that these people shuffle around a lot, which would enable, you know, this page would enable folks, you know, if a coach gets reassigned or a coordinator gets reassigned, to just really easily visit this page. With a couple clicks, now you set up the coaching relationship, the coaching plans are going to be aligned, and that notification stream is going to be configurable at the local level.
And so just to provide a little bit more clarity, Ben, would you go back to the matrix view for a second? So the way that would play out, even though you see a long list here, if you're a coordinator or a coach and you have 3 pathways, for example, you've been assigned, you would only see three rows going down the left-hand column. And so kind of what we're looking at is really more of a district view where you have kind of the, you know, view of all of your pathways. But we would assume that for most coaches and coordinators, they've been assigned a smaller subset. And so if Ben scrolls up just a little bit, you see a little filter kind of placeholder. And so the idea would be you'd kind of have a list of all the pathways and you'd be able to select only the ones that you kind of want to have the view on. And then concurrently to that, if you look across the top, student outcome driven practice, equity access, you know, that goes across, right, scrolls across, but you'd also have the ability to filter and say, I only want to look at student outcome driven practice. So only the kind of 4 columns from that would be showing up. And so you'd have the ability to kind of manipulate your view, because we realize that this can be a pretty overwhelming view if everything's populated and you see a lot of numbers and a lot of icons. So there would be, you know, an opportunity to clean up that view and kind of reduce it down to just those essential elements and just the pathways that you want to focus on.
Thanks, David.
Dave, quick question for you on this tool. As again, maybe a coaching coordinator in the district or even the coach assigned to this particular pathway through its continuous improvement, you showed us the flag where there was an action plan. Is there a place for the reviewer to make suggestions and or, you know, ask questions of, you know, this team, as, you know, because you took us to another screen where it showed the action plan. Is that part of this tool? Because I see your picture down at the very bottom. Is that, you know, where it shows notes? Is that something where you would write a note to the pathway team, you know, and, you know, great work team, just reviewed the evidence, you know, have you thought about ... you know, or I have, you know, I have seen evidence in action, but you have something in writing where you could submit into this indicator, those kind of things. Is that part of this process that you're envisioning?
Dave, you want me to take that one?
Sure, yes. The short answer is yes, Steve. I mean, I think there's definitely the comments and the notes that are connected to the action steps that are part of the overall action plan. And then as you know, there's kind of the wall on the homepage of the OPTIC landing page, so you can also have a little bit more of a global conversation. But yeah, that's very much the idea, I think, behind a lot of this, Steve, is we want to kind of continue to bring down the conversation to the grain size that is most appropriate to that pathway, and kind of just in time. So that would go along the lines of what Ben was showing around the raised hand, like, hey, we're stuck, we're on this particular step, and maybe when they're raising their hand, they can annotate that with a little note, like this is where we're getting stuck. But as you can see, being able to bring in some of the communication within the actual plans themselves, so you don't have to necessarily navigate back out to the OPTIC homepage to have those conversations. And I think there's continued conversations and kind of feedback that we need to glean from folks like you guys to get a better sense of how that plays out in practice. We don't want to overwhelm people with multiple redundant places to add comments and notes, but we certainly want to make it so that it's relatively intuitive and it's kind of in line, and you don't have to necessarily navigate off of the page you're on in order to do that.
Right. Thank you. Well, I was thinking even Lily, I don't know how many pathways Lily oversees, but I imagine with a district her size, there's multiple. And so if she's reviewing this, it's just a nice quick step to somebody that's looking at multiple pathways.
Right, Stephen. And so, the other thing kind of related that we're playing around with is on that, do we need to have like essentially a home base for the coordinators and coaches so that they can have a wider purview, not just at the matrix level, although maybe that's what we would build it around, but like, here, so for ConnectEd, for our team on our back-end content management system, we have a little bit of dashboard, and so we can see the 5 most recent people who registered, the 5 most recent projects created. So we're kind of interested in this idea for a coordinator coach role. Would you want to see like 5 most recent pieces of evidence uploaded, 5 most recent self-assessments done, 5 most recent action plans created? So maybe this would be a good opportunity to ask you guys, does that seem like it would be a useful feature?
Yeah, I want to chime in a bit here, Dave. Steve, thanks for starting off that question. I had in my note here that in the coordinator dashboard concept, if that is, where you have the coaching components built into the action plan. Can you show that again, Ben?
Yeah.
You're playing with the idea of, yeah, okay. So you, on the top, it'll show the action plan that the pathway developed. Yeah. And it will have the steps and all of that. And then underneath it, it'll have the coaching plan. So my first question, this view is only accessible to the coordinator, not the pathway teams themselves.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, and then this page is accessible. Is it viewable as well as editable? Editing and collaborative, meaning we could add to each other's idea, or is it if I put this from my district onto the coordinator, can I share it with Steve? And can Steve put his input and insights into my thoughts and my coaching plan?
Well, that's a great question, Lily. We haven't, as you can see, we're just kind of in design phase, so I think anything is possible right now. I'd love to, so in that example you gave, you were assuming Steve was within your district as well, or you're talking about sharing across district?
No, cross-district. Cross-district. Yeah, in particular for someone like me, and I'm going to speak for Steve as well, cross-district collaboration for us at the coordinator level has been invaluable in past years through ConnectEd facilitation, and since then we have had really little of that. And so if this is a platform that can continue that networking collaboration, that would be an ideal play to build in.
Yeah,
that's one.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Like, could I just let me ask? So in the example you gave, are you talking about a plan that you yourself, Lily, would have created, or it would be one of your coaches that you would want to share? You'd want to share their plan, say, across with a colleague in another district. Right,
like a work role-alike level, like coach to coach, coordinator to coordinator, where we could collaborate at our level of challenge and support of each other.
Well, I think, Lily, the technological possibilities are relatively easy. You saw the page that Ben said was showing in terms of share your plan, so you could easily use that to share it beyond your district or school. I think the only thing that I would have some concern about would be kind of intellectual property or ownership, or opting into that. So if it's you, Lily, and you want to share your plan with Steve, I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't want to facilitate that. If it's one of your coaches and you as a district person are saying, hey, Joe's plan is great, I want to share that with Steve, that's where we may want to think through kind of the permissions and the confidentiality, I guess. But,
you nailed it. That was my third question, because we're in need of exemplar action plans that we could share across district as samples and exemplars. So that's something, and that's, I don't know, so maybe somewhere in this platform a district can offer, this is what we find to be high yield, high impact action plan this year. But we share it out there, and then other districts could do the same, because that's where we're going this year, is going deeper with getting really quality action plan.
Yeah, I like that, Lily. I think it's definitely worth us exploring a little bit more. One thing that comes to mind is it's possible that we may even be able to de-identify the individuals attached to a plan. So you would just see the, the content of it, but you wouldn't be able to necessarily trace it back, say, oh, that's from, Lhasa, and I see that's, Mary who's responsible, but you're pulling out the, the meat of it, right? What is the action plan? What was the SMART goal, et cetera, and doing some de-identification. I think that's definitely worth some exploration. And, Ben and I were just talking this morning, and, I continue to believe that one of the unique roles that ConnectEd can play within the larger linked learning field is being able to kind of take advantage of our wider purview and identify kind of whether it's a promising or exemplary practice or something even at this grain size, which is exemplary action plans, and be able to surface those up to others in the field. I think that's a role that we can and should play. And I think, we have an ability to do that through studios. We just need to kind of think through some of the dimensions of that. But I think what you're getting at is very intriguing to me.
Awesome. All right. I think those are my 3 points, and I look forward to it.
Thanks, Lily.
Okay, I'm going to just do a quick scan and see if there's any key things that I missed in some of the things that we're thinking about, but I think that we've pretty much covered our latest thinking. Yeah, I don't think there's a screen that we missed. To wrap up, I just kind of want to plant a seed, or revisit the seed I hope to plant, that, ConnectEd is in the process of thinking through a wraparound service around continuous improvement that would go beyond what we've traditionally done with OPTIC training and support, because we know that just giving folks a technology tool does not result magically in a culture of continuous improvement, but we do think that where you have, and they're working towards that culture, a tool like OPTIC can be invaluable as the digital infrastructure to monitor impact, see growth over time, catalog all the different pieces of design and evidence related to implementation. So we're pretty excited about that, and if that comes up as something that your district may be interested in, we're not in a position to offer that more robust wraparound service yet, but more just kind of being transparent that this is an area that ConnectEd is really committed to. Around quality improvement, and OPTIC really focusing in on pathway quality improvement over time. So I guess with that said, if there's let's open it up to any last questions or comments, and then again, if you do want to share this webinar content with folks, we will have a link in the next few days where you can access, where your peers could access this WebEx. All right, folks, so any follow-up requests, just email me, and if you want to share out this webinar, we'll make a link available for folks where they can probably view it on YouTube. As always, thanks for your interest in continuous improvement and helping us think through OPTIC, and wish everyone a great day. We're going to call it a wrap. Thanks.